ProRevenge. Posted by user, Mage Tomlan. Screw me over, I take away your promotion. For 18 months I'd been working from home, as most of us had. From a work perspective, this has been great. I've been more productive than when I'm in the office, been able to work more flexible hours and have saved a ton of money by not commuting. My workplace had an agreement that those working from home can do what hours they want, so long as we are able to answer urgent calls in core hours and we get all our work done. Fair enough as far as I'm concerned. For 16 months this worked great, as above. Then over a few weekends, I had to clear out of the house, and took pictures of all the items that are in good condition but we no longer want, with a view to giving them away to whoever wants it. One day when I'm working from home I take my lunch break, make a quick sandwich, and post the items that I'm giving away on one of those local Facebook free pages. I didn't know it at the time but one of the managers, called Shambles henceforth, from my work was also signed up to that page and he saw my post. He then took it upon himself to go to the owner of the company, and tell him that I was slacking off and posting on Facebook during work hours. For context, he wasn't my boss, who was super chill so long as everything was done on time, nor was the complaint to my boss, but to the owner of the company. We're a big business so there's a lot of people in the chain of command between me and the owner. And to top it off I'd been doing a lot of work for Shambles. He'd outsourced the running of entire projects to me over the last 18 months, all of which I'd executed well, and he'd taken ample credit for, and this was the only time in 18 months I'd posted anything on Facebook, because I never post. So the owner contacted me, and to be fair he's a decent guy. The conversation went like this. Owner?
I've been told you're posting on Facebook during work hours. Just be smart about it, it doesn't look good when colleagues see it.
Completely understand, just so you know I posted that during my lunch break.
I was told you were posting at noon. The company lunch break is usually 1 to 2.
I did, but that's because when I'm at home working I always take my lunch 12 to 1.
I don't have an issue with that, just keep your head down.
Like I said, a decent guy. I wasn't really in trouble and the owner didn't seem to care, but then I started to think, wait, who the hell has gone to the owner with this in the first place? Long story short, a coworker, who was working on site that day, heard on the grapevine, that Shambles had been bitching to the owner about me, and how I'm always on social media when I should be working. I literally only have Facebook, and I only use that for Messenger 99% of the time. Cue petty revenge. As I said before, Shambles likes to outsource work to me. I never minded this. The work was varied and it broke the week up, plus my own boss didn't mind as I always had my work for him done on time. However, I never got recognition for this extra work. For 2 years I managed a sub-department, completely on my own because he didn't have time to do it. I didn't get a penny more for it, but it was a good group of people and I enjoyed getting experience of management. Well, after this every time Shambles came to me with an issue, I would say I was super swamped but that I'd try to deal with it if I had time. The projects he tried to outsource to me I immediately rejected, saying that I had a full plate from my actual job. And that sub-department I ran. We'll get to that. Over the next couple of months, Shambles starts missing his deadlines, issues come up with existing projects that he hasn't fixed, and employees are complaining that every time they go to him with an issue it doesn't get resolved. It dawns on me at this point that I've basically been doing this guy's job for him for years. Stuff that. I set up a meeting with my boss, and put forward my arguments for why I should be promoted, or really, why I should have been ages ago. I point to all the projects I've successfully run, as well as the sub-department I've managed for 2 years. He completely agrees, and says he'll take it to his boss. Now somehow, I don't know how, but when I go to the next meeting with my boss's boss, Shambles is there too. He's on the same level in the company as my boss's boss. A little phased, but not willing to give up, I put my arguments forward to them. Shambles lets me finish, then proceeds to tell me that I don't know enough about our work to manage, I don't have the required people skills, and then he tells me, and this is verbatim. Besides, People here don't respect you. They respect me. I know I'm a good manager. If you really think about it, you know you wouldn't be. I forget what else was said after that, but I was completely destroyed. Boss's boss comes up to me afterwards, and tells me that Shamps is an idiot, but unfortunately, he's got the approval of the higher ups, so what he says has too much sway for him to go against him. I tell boss's boss that if that's the way it is, I'm going to look for other employment. He sighs and says, I don't blame you. Cue ProRevenge. During the time it took me to look for, and apply to other jobs, I have time to think about how I can get back at Shambles. He's used me for years, and is now blocking my promotion. I'd already stopped working on his stuff, and his projects were going from bad to worse, but I needed something more. Now this next part could be an entire post on its own, so I've bulleted it for brevity. If you want more context I can write it out later. I'm an accredited internal auditor for our quality systems. I ask if I can be assigned a couple of last audits, before I leave to help them out. I carry out these audits, and using my intimate knowledge of Shambles projects find every single issue I can. A number of people also hate Shambles, and give me more dirt on him. Someone gives me breakthrough information, that Shambles has been forging signatures, and bypassing multiple company procedures to make his KPIs look better. I write up the report, with tons of evidence attached, and send it off. The report gets flagged at the highest level because of what it shows. Shambles gets dragged over the coals. I wish I could say this story ends with the Shambles getting fired, and having to sell his body on the street for scraps, but, obviously using all the connections he has, he keeps his job. I later found out though, that he was due a massive promotion, as in, catapulted to the top of the company, running whole divisions kind of thing. That never happened though, with his declining numbers, as well as a damning audit showing all his shortcomings. He's basically told he'll never progress beyond where he is, and that he's lucky to have a job at all. He still works there and I'm told his ego has been taken down a whole washing line worth of pegs. As for me, I'd love to say I got a better job with a massive raise. That's half true. I decided to pursue my dream job, literally, since I've been a kid, my dream job, in a totally different industry. All the experience I had counted in my favor, and although I took a bit of a pay cut I've never enjoyed work more. Oh, and that sub-department I was running. They knew that when I left Shambles would take over running them again, so in my last month of the company, I gave them all tutorials on how to search for jobs and pass interviews. I'd worked in recruitment previously. I've heard from a number of them since, that they'd landed better jobs and thanked me in part for it. Not the perfect ending, but I'm damn happy with it. Posted by user, Nkata1. Greedy landlord gets what he deserves. TLDR, new landlord raises rent, so we don't renew our lease. He becomes obsessed with proving he is smarter than us and loses everything. This took place in Australia. About 15 years ago I ran a small successful beauty salon, as a young 20-something woman. We rented a large space, in a building from a very elderly gentleman, who let us do anything we wanted to the place as long as we paid our rent on time. We put lots of money into improvements inside, built new rooms and redecorated, and he was thrilled with the new look. He eventually sold the building to a cocky late 30s smarmy businessman, as he called himself, who immediately raised the rent. No problem, business is business, but right from the start, he had an attitude with an all-female run business, and would constantly belittle us, and make comments about how we didn't know the business like he did. His favorite insult was to call us bimbos. We didn't really give two shits what he had to say, and in all honesty we made our money off being attractive, bimbos as he liked to say, and he was a gross old dude, with a monobrow, so we didn't pay him any mind. A few months after the purchase, a massive construction project took place right near our building, restricting access and limiting the number of clients we could take, due to no parking. The construction also pretty much eliminated any walk-in clients, as who would want to go to a salon, when there's jackhammering going on right across the road. The new owner gave us 14 days notice, of raising the rent yet again. We knew this wasn't legal, so we pushed back, and got a tirade of abuse that he was a businessman and we were just bimbos who didn't know the law. At this time, our lease was coming up for renewal in less than 3 months. We asked for a 1-year renewal of our lease, which he refused. I guess he thought he could bluff us? He said we could sign for 3 years, at a much higher rent, or bugger off. So we chose the latter. With plenty of notice, we advised in writing that we didn't intend to renew our lease, and he hurled abuse at us yet again, saying he would have it rented in no time, and we would regret it. We moved 5 minutes drive away, to a better location, for close to half the rent, and the place is actually still thriving today, although I have since sold my share and moved on to other things. During the last month of our lease, the landlord would bring prospective tenants into the property day and night. He would even open the doors while people were in treatments, to let the prospective tenants look around. Fortunately, due to the construction next door, we didn't have too many clients, but the noise drove every possible tenant away, without us even having to say a word. The landlord had advertised the property, including many of the additions we had made. However, we had it in writing from the original landlord that they were to be removed, and the shop returned to its original state, 4 bare walls, at the end of our lease. So that's what we did. We began to strip the place of the rooms we had built, and move our stuff to our new salon. We took hundreds of photos for evidence, and began the setup of our business out of our new location. Well, to say the landlord was furious would be an understatement. He got a lawyer to write us a letter demanding compensation for the destruction of his property. We just referenced our contract, which specified a building of X size with 4 walls. We were still bound by our original lease, that we had signed with the lovely old landlord. No new lease had been entered into with Mr. Businessman. I offered for him to pay us for just half the cost of materials, no labor or contractor cost we had incurred, and we would leave the addition standing. He laughed in my face and told me he wouldn't pay $1, and that he would sue me for every dollar I made, so hard that my grandchildren would still be paying my debt. He was a charming bloke. We showed him our agreement with the original landlord, that all changes needed to be removed, and that this agreement would stand unless another was made, and agreed to by the tenant and landlord at a later date. We stripped that place bare. Didn't even leave a single shelf on the walls. Cleaned it till it sparkled. He then got his lawyer to write another letter saying we didn't give enough notice, and were required to pay another 3 years of rent. I said show us the contract where we agreed to this. We were then sent a copy of our email requesting a 1-year contract and an invoice for the rent for that period. Well, I said he never agreed to that and we never signed a contract for that either. It went back and forth, getting nastier and more ridiculous. He was obsessed. I decided it was time to get some revenge and hit him where it hurts, his pocket. Every communication I got from his solicitor, I made sure was sent to my registered post. I would often respond to only part of a letter, requiring the solicitor to send another letter to follow up. I was a bimbo after all, right? I couldn't be expected to answer more than one question at a time. I would respond to each letter by email, but require a registered letter acknowledging receipt of my email. Solicitor was more than happy to oblige, more billable charges to his client. The more petty the landlord got, the more petty I became in response. Don't even try to out-bimbo a bimbo, mate. The landlord had at this time also refused to refund our bond, claiming he hadn't had time to do a final inspection. So we lodged a claim with the appropriate ombudsman, and of course, the landlord came back with a laundry list of fake damage claims. Luckily we had our photos, to prove he was full of shite, and he had to return our bond in full. By this stage, we had been out of the premises for 7 months, and were doing great at our new location. In that whole time, he couldn't get anyone to rent the place due to the construction, even after reducing the rent 3 times. He had spent so much money on solicitor fees, and failing to collect rent, that he had to sell the building, and his wife filed for divorce. We found this out when the daughter of the lovely original owner called us, to tell us the sad news that he had passed away. He had always loved us girls, and we would always spoil him if he came to visit, and fuss over him with coffee and biscuits and give him his favorite treatment, of a hand massage. The daughter was friends with Mr. Businessman's wife, and gave us all the goss. It took the new nasty owner another 18 months to sell the building, and all the while it sat empty and he didn't collect a penny in rent. Guess he shouldn't have played chicken with the bimbos after all. We were actually pretty happy there, and probably would have stayed if he hadn't decided to prove that we were so inferior. If you like these stories, hit that like button, and leave a comment below. You can upvote these stories by pressing the links in the description. If you want to hear more stories from me, hit the subscribe button, and press the bell icon to be alerted when a new video is posted.